You shot 4 bullets into him, sir. He was just getting his license and registration, sir.
But at the end of the day, we as the people have to be fed up and say enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Listen, we have to make a decision. Black, white, brown, tall, skinny, short, it doesn't matter. One injustice one place is an injustice in every place. And we gotta come together as a people and declare that I'm not tolerating this anymore.
We gotta stop. We have to stop the nonsense and take back our communities. And we have to police ourselves. And in the event that an officer tries you unjustly, don't wait for him to pull the trigger. Fight like you love yourself. Fight like Ali for your life. If you don't fight for your life, how much do you love yourself? Black lives matter! 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 Black lives matter!
Black lives matter! Don't shoot! Hands down! Don't shoot! Hands down! Don't shoot! Hands down! Don't shoot! Hands down! Don't shoot! Hands down!
I mean, we got 100% purity evidence of violations by the people that are supposed to be serving us. If they aren't supposed to protect and serve us, why should we have to answer to them?
If I had to give a definition to race, I would say that it's a categorization of people by shared physiological characteristics. But even giving that definition, I would say that it's important to keep in mind that race has largely only been acknowledged in order to create and perpetuate systems of oppression and inequality.
I think the current understanding on, or the broad consensus on the definition of race is the color of your skin.
It's always been something that has been used against minority groups, people of color, specifically Black people and also Native Americans, to, sort of absolve white guilt for their treatment against us. But I think since then, the idea that race is something that's biological has been denounced. And we're more able to understand that it is a societal difference rather than a biological difference. And I believe that in some ways it has evolved into something that can be used by people of color themselves to sort of unite different cultures and different experiences, shared experiences.
Here, the kind of discrimination they do is often houses, when the landlords wants to give rent to other people. You hear a landlord say, I can give anybody except an African, or I can give anybody except a Nigerian or someone from Ghana, I think, which is not fair. When you ask them, they will say it's either Africans are poor or they are drug addicts, and this is quite disheartening. I don't think people need to label others like that.
I grew up in America up until around high school, and the rest of the time I've been in Japan. It wasn't until I came to Japan where I kind of started to understand what race was, what racism was, and how that affected me as, a Black person living in Japan. Japan is very much victim to Eurocentric standards of beauty, for example, light skin, which is a standard across Asia. Bihaku skincare products and like straight hair, just things like that, things that I just didn't have naturally, that I felt I needed to have. So if someone believes that racism is a non-issue in Japan, I would bring up that colorism definitely is. There's proof of it, and colorism inherently is connected with racism.
I definitely have been subjugated to discrimination based on race numerous times throughout my life. Generally, it usually results in anger, and when I was younger, it resulted in silence and feeling frozen and helpless and alone. It usually actually results in a lot of self-gaslighting, and that is also because I am trained to do that and to believe that what's happening to me isn't real. And that's what happens when the entire world is socialized to see things through white people's eyes.
I can't speak for other countries, but at least in America, there's pretty much a history of anti-blackness that started from slavery. It's really important to remember that, like, Black people who were brought as slaves were never started out on an equal footing, and throughout history there have been concerted efforts to suppress them, whether it be via legislation like redlining, voter suppression. A lot of these things continue, I guess, over the course of history to show America's kind of ugly reaction to having to embrace the people that they brought here.
I think that for a lot of Japanese people, they view racism as, violence and, stuff like cops' treatment of Black men in America. And that sort of leads them to believe that Japan is not like that and Japan isn't racist because, that's not something that really happens here. But I think by listening to, Black people in Japan and their experiences, Japanese people also be able to better realize that racism is very, very broad, and even the smallest microaggressions can add up into something bigger.
I think systemic racism and inequality often goes hand in hand. Systemic problem, I think, requires a systemic solution, and we are all part of the system, so I think we all have a role to play.
The movement has really emphasized and let everybody know that racism is in every aspect of life. It's in our voting. It's in our, housing and in our geographic location. There's racism in our healthcare. There's racism in our educational system. There's racism in such small aspects of life that sometimes you don't even think about, but have affected people for so long.
We have seen some change with the way that we criticize racism, in that we are putting less focus on individuals who are racist, and more pressure onto the system that continues to create and excuse racism. This can be seen with people's criticisms of the American police system and how we've been focusing less on individual police officers and more of, defunding the police and understanding that the police system itself is corrupt and will continue to create corrupt police officers unless there's a critical change.
The system of law enforcement, they condone violence, condone murder, condone oppression, condone racism, any act of oppression towards minorities, specifically towards the Black community.
I think it'd be ignorant to assume that the uprising, at least in North America, and the Black Lives Matter protests, and the scale of them, more importantly, it would be ignorant to assume that those have nothing to do with the pandemic. I know students, and especially my generation, Generation Z, are taking a lot of time to educate themselves, reflect, and act on all of these issues. And that's something that I guess is coming with the time that everybody has.
I think that there's something about being at a protest, where there's a lot of you guys and you're fighting for the same cause, that the atmosphere just sort of, radiates with a lot of passion that you can't help but just feel, uplifted by just being there. Yet at the same time, it's pretty heavy and disheartening when you think about the reasons as to why you're even there and what you're even fighting for.
The best thing that Gen Z can do to improve race relations is kind of take the time to listen to people who are part of these minority groups that are feeling and are being kind of disadvantaged.
Always advocate for equity within your field. It doesn't always have to be, you going to law school and becoming a lawyer or protesting every single day on the streets, but advocate for equity and anti-racism within your own field. Wherever you are, have hard conversations and advocate for people to thrive regardless of what they look like.
I also would like to add that another issue that has come with Black Lives Matter is sort of this fear of change or fear of listening. And it shouldn't be that way. If you're not black, listen to your black friends. Listen to black women. Listen to black men. Listen to black queer people. Listen to black transgender people. Listen to their concerns, their needs, their stories. Because at the end of the day, because just based on the color of our skin, we have lived completely different realities that, you know, forms who we are.
And we can change and we can break the cycle of systemic racism by doing protests and not just screaming Black Lives Matter, you know, by proving it. You know what I mean? Sign petitions, start petitions, vote, run for office, educate yourself, and then educate those in your home.
It's very easy to get sucked into performative activism with things like Blackout Tuesday and just easy one-click things that sort of satisfy that need to show out for Black and brown people without necessarily doing much. So I think that as allies, especially, people should be a little bit more critical of themselves and what they can do in their own lives, whether that be speaking to family members or friends and standing up for people without a voice in real life, physically as well.
And so I challenge everybody to constantly ask questions, constantly have hard conversations, and even if you're not protesting, try and see what you can do within your world and in your relationships to be anti-racist.
When all of this dies down, do not get it twisted. The people that are going to have the most to pay is going to be the Black community. We don't get to check out of this work. It is part of our work. We were born in this work, and this work never leaves us.